10 real facts about witches and witch hunting in 1600s England. In the shadow of England's villages and moors, fear ran deeper than reason. During the 1600s, hundreds of people, mostly women, were accused of dark pacts, devilish magic, and deadly curses. But the truth behind the witch hunts is stranger than any fairy tale. These are 10 real facts about witches and witch hunting in 1600s England. Fact 1. Most witches were poor old women. Forget the image of a cackling sorceress with a pointy hat. In 1600s England, the average witch was someone society had already cast aside. An elderly woman living alone on the edge of town, maybe with a limp, a crooked smile, or a cat for company. She might have been a midwife, a herbalist, or just someone who spoke her mind to often. In a time when people feared what they didn't understand, that was all it took. The more vulnerable you were, the more likely you'd be accused. And once fingers were pointed, there was almost no way to clear your name. You could be accused over a grudge. In the 1600s, it didn't take dark magic to be labeled a witch. Just a little bad blood with the wrong neighbor. Say you argued with someone over a broken fence, and the next day, their cow dropped dead. That wasn't misfortune, that was witchcraft. Accusations often came from old grudges, jealousies, or simple bad luck. If your baby got sick, your bread wouldn't rise, or your crops failed, it was easier to blame the strange woman down the lane than admit you didn't understand the world. One of the most infamous witch tests was brutally simple and impossible to survive. It was called the swimming test. The accused was tied right thumb to left thumb to right toe, and thrown into a river or pond. If they sank, they were innocent but likely drowned. If they floated, it was proof that the devil himself kept them above water and they'd be dragged out and hanged. It was a twisted logic: survive the test and you die anyway. And all of it played out in front of entire villages, cheering, praying, or weeping on the banks. Animals could condemn you. In 1600s England, even your pet could betray you. A black cat wasn't just a companion, it was a familiar, a demon in disguise that served its witch master. Toads, mice, even hares, any animal seen near your home could be twisted into evidence of sorcery. If someone claimed they saw you feeding a creature in secret, it was said to be a blood pact that the animal drank from you and shared in your dark powers. Some women were even accused of naming their familiars creatures like Vinegar Tom, Pyewacket, or Grizzle Greedigat. It sounds absurd now, but back then, it was enough to get you killed. Children testified in court. One of the most chilling truths about England's witch trials. Children, some as young as 9, were used as witnesses, and their words could send people to the gallows. In the infamous Pendle witch trials of 1612, a little girl named Janet Device stood in court and accused her own family of witchcraft. Her mother, her brother, even her grandmother. The court believed her, and 10 people were executed. Today we know how fragile memory can be, especially in a child. But back then, innocence was mistaken for truth, and those too young to understand were handed the power to destroy lives. Some witch hunters made a career out of it. Not all witch hunters were local villagers acting out of fear. Some made it a profession, traveling from town to town, hunting evil for a price. The most infamous was Matthew Hopkins, the self-declared witch finder general. In just 2 years during the English Civil War, he claimed to expose over 200 witches, more than anyone else in British history. But Hopkins wasn't guided by justice, he was guided by gold. Villages paid him to root out witches, and the more he found, the more he earned. Torture, tricks, and forced confessions were his tools. His reign left a trail of executions and made witch hysteria explode across the country. Confessing didn't always save you. You might think that if you confessed to being a witch, you'd be spared. But in 1600s England, confessing was often just the beginning of your nightmare. Some confessed under torture, starved, sleep-deprived, pricked with needles. Others broke under pressure just to stop the pain. And while a confession might delay your execution, it could also seal your fate. Many who confessed were hanged anyway, others were imprisoned for life. And worse still, a confession often meant naming others, spreading fear, dividing families, and turning neighbors against each other. Witches weren't always burned in England. When we picture witch hunts, we often imagine women tied to stakes, flames rising beneath them. But in England, that wasn't usually the case. Unlike in parts of Europe where burning was common, English law mostly called for witches to be hanged. It was still brutal, but slightly more civilized in the eyes of the courts. That said, there were exceptions if a person was also convicted of petty treason, like a woman killing her husband by witchcraft. Burning was back on the table. In those rare cases, the fire did rise. Witch marks were used as proof. In a time before forensic science, witch hunters turned to the body for signs of guilt. They searched for what they called a witch mark, a mole, a birthmark, even a scar. Any unusual blemish could be labeled the devil's mark, where Satan was said to have touched or suckled his servant. Investigators called prickers would jab these marks with needles. If the accused didn't bleed or flinch, it was taken as proof they were inhuman. But the prickers had tricks, retractable needles, sleight of hand, and cruel intent. In truth, it was never about evidence, it was about finding a reason to convict. The Witchcraft Act wasn't fully repealed until 1951. You might think witch hunts are ancient history, locked in the 1600s. But shockingly, the laws that criminalized witchcraft remained in place for centuries. The original Witchcraft Act of 1542 evolved over time, but it wasn't until 1951, less than a lifetime ago, that the final version was repealed in the UK. Up until then, pretending to have magical powers was still a crime, even if real witches were no longer being executed. That's the legacy of fear. It lingers. Long after the hangings stopped, the shadow of the witch still haunted British law. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Or else a witch might just visit you tonight. She's already picked out a nice spot by your window. But hey, easy fix, tap that like button, hit subscribe, and you're safe for now.